I'm sorry about the slap. Didn't mean to hurt you. Just stress.
Give me your phone.
I'm calling the chopper. I don't want to hear another word about it. He'll be there in 30 minutes, okay?
The monster that started this whole mess is shocked Rick would go to such lengths, but it was either that or jail time, no doubt. Now, under his instructions, they stay on track, go hunting, clean up the mess later, and pretend like nothing just went horribly wrong. A helicopter buzzes overhead, and the next time we see it, it has landed in the desert. Richard steps out first and opens the door for the blonde goddess Jen. She carries a duffel bag and heads straight toward the waiting glass house. Outside, the pilot Roberto reminds Richard he's available if needed, then hands him a little gift with a mischievous grin before the two men part. Inside, Jen waits seductively in the room while her partner lingers by the door, taking a moment to stare. They meet in the middle, and he swiftly pulls her against him, soaking in the moment. Grabbing her lush curls, he makes it clear she holds his reins, so she takes off his clothes, lowers herself, and indeed takes the wheel. He's got a clueless wife back home, stressing over the details of a communion menu while believing he's away on a business trip. When the call ends, he slips into bed beside Jen. She's moody, and he wishes things weren't so complicated. But fate had to give him kids and make Jen too irresistible, a compliment she gladly accepts before she starts to kiss him. By morning, she helps herself to a glass of water and an apple. But when she turns around, the glass slips from her hand in shock. Behind the colored pane stands a guy with a gun, just staring. Another appears, and Blondie calmly calls out to her host. They step in with a stream of complaints, but it simmers down just as quickly when their focus shifts to the stranger. Richard reluctantly introduces her as a friend and insists she won't be staying long, 2 days tops. When she gives them their privacy, one guy teasingly asks about his Elizabeth and the kids, while the Casanova basically retorts they weren't supposed to see his cheat sheet. Everyone settles in. Jen, with the nice keister, is giving summer vibes and ready to have the time of her life. There's the sun, the pool, wine, cable, cigarettes, and plenty of room for laughter. By evening, she's telling Stan about her dream of moving to Los Angeles, saying she wants to be noticed, while Dimitri watches her through binoculars like a creep. Richard joins the table, and soon the focus shifts to the gift the pilot handed him earlier. It's peyote, and he warns it's dangerous when Jen asks for some, but the other boys don't mind playing with fire. Still, he makes them understand the magic toy is so powerful, it could make you compromise yourself. He hands it over to his chick to keep safe from the boys. Indoors, she decides the best place to hide it is in the locket she wears. Then she turns on the music and steps out to put on a show. But since Rick insists on being a spoil and refuses a dance, her next target is Stan, who happily agrees. She starts grinding on him, swaying left and right, leaving the other two men as spectators. When her married boyfriend decides playtime is over, he hoists her over his shoulder, making her giggle while her dance partner grunts. By morning, her partner isn't in bed. She strolls out to the patio and finds Stan excited for her company, inviting her to dine with him. The previous night she talked about wanting to be noticed, but Stan's stares would make anyone change their mind. Dimitri's floating nearby with his face covered by a magazine, and his friend explains it's a nasty hangover, adding that dear Richard stepped out on an errand, something about passports. After failing to distract herself with her phone, she announces she'll go pack and bolts, leaving him with breakfast. She's peeled when Stan steals sight of her from the corner, and she jumps, trying to cover herself the moment she notices him, which makes him apologize. Still, he moves closer, wanting to keep the connection, hands her his card, and suggests they find time to get their groove on. But the second she says she's not sure that work might call, he scoffs and calls her bluff. With each question, he throws her way. He grows passive-aggressive, not liking that she's rejecting him. He cites last night, insisting things were different between them, but now she's acting weird. She pulls back to put distance between them, but he's not having it, pressing against her back and caging her in when she tries to run. She moves to stop him, but he's no gentleman. Dimitri barges in with a bag of food, sees her crying, but chooses to beat it after Stan gives him the option to either join them or stay. He closes the door and leaves his friend to make her scream in agony. Then, as if to drown out the noise, he turns on the TV and heads out for a swim while Jen bangs against the window. When Richard returns, he immediately senses something's off. His friends are on the couch, and the brute stands up to confess his crimes. Shocked, Rick rushes to the room and finds his girl flinching. She wants to be miles away from the scene and asks him to call the helicopter amidst his apologies and promises to sort things out. Outside, he yells at Stan for being a douche. When she wakes next, she suddenly has a job in Canada and a huge sum of money to start fresh. Her boyfriend's in her face, thinking he's fixed everything, says it's the same thing as LA, but she only wants that damn helicopter so she can go home. He switches gears, pushing the blame on her beauty and acting like a slap on the wrist will settle it. Jen threatens to spill to his wife, only to find herself on the floor, dazed from a slap.
He'll be there in 30 minutes, okay?
He starts burning her things while his friends prep the ammo. Later, he calls his lovely wife to Taku, praising her organizational skills and telling her he loves her and he'll be home soon. Stan comes to apologize about Jen, but he's burned her memory too. The poor girl is still dangling from the stick, dripping blood and crawling with ants, but she isn't dead yet. With blood pooled in her mouth, she gasps back to consciousness. The movement doesn't come easy, bones and flesh grinding in protest, vital fluid drooling out of her mouth. Her surroundings slowly sharpen. The sky, the desert rocks, her MP3 player and a lighter just within arm's reach. With the earpiece, she draws the lighter closer, picks it up, and sets a dry bush by the stub of flame. The heat climbs as fire licks upward, but the roots split apart before she's a crispy critter, freeing her from the impalement. There's no time to rest. The troops roll up in bikes and a SUV, marching towards the cliff to finish the job. Jen stirs and begins dragging herself away from the scene. The log is still lodged in her gut, and her legs won't work, but she manages to slip out of sight just in time. From her hiding place, she listens as the trio find nothing but ash and no corpse. Stan suddenly flips on the empathy, figuring maybe they can save her if someone else hasn't gotten to her first, but Richard isn't having it. He'd rather Stan kill the field switch and get back to hunting. They retreat to their vehicles, and only then does she sigh in relief. Nightfall comes, and the men have navigated to the bottom of the cliff. They find the burned stub and the forgotten MP3 player. With a flashlight, Richard finds bloodstains, first against the rock and then forming a trail for them to follow that assures him they'll find her soon. The search begins, the blood trail long, starting out thin but thickening before it thins again and finally stops. Before them is a body of water, flashlights revealing nothing. It's time to split. Dimitri and the murderer head in opposite directions, leaving Stan to decide. In his defense, two people in one direction is dumb, and she could come back, so he'll stay put. If that's a bother, then he can swap with Rick. They let him have his way. Head out with bikes, while he stays dead center with the Rover and its headlights blaring. Instead of standing around, he climbs into the car with his rifle and cools off, fastening the seatbelt just to kill the reminder alarm. Meanwhile, Jen is pushing through the water, ears pricked when the sound of motorbikes cuts through the night. Soaked and desperate, she quickens her pace. Dimitri cruises past but doesn't see her because she's underwater, resurfacing only when he's gone. Soon she's back on land, finding cover behind a heap of sand, interestingly right behind the mute, who's stopped to take a piss, his rifle just a stone's throw away. As stealthily as she can, she limps toward the rifle and manages to snatch it just in time, forcing him to turn and beg. She pulls the trigger, but it's empty, and in a heartbeat, he swaps it back and shoves her down. Now he can talk, yelling between a kick to her face that she's dumb enough to think he'd leave a loaded gun lying around. He tells the brute he's got her and will deal with her himself. Stan feels the air ease, less tense now, as Jen's summer pick strums from her forgotten MP3 player. Meanwhile, Dimitri's busy trying to drown her, the plan being to drag things out and torture her first. But she manages to swap his knife, and the next time he forces her head underwater, she drives it into him. The second jab sinks into his shoulder, and the last one straight through his eye. He thrashes and screams, but it doesn't last long. Once he's cold as ice, she shakily pulls the blade free and lets his body drift beneath the water. Now, the bike and his backpack are hers, but the fuel runs out and she's forced to continue on foot. She makes her way to a cave and sparks a fire with her trusted lighter before dumping out the contents of the bag. Just a few supplies, including a flashlight, a can of drink. She downs the drink, then tries to assess the wound, but even peeling her shirt is pure agony. Defeated, she collapses to the ground in tears. Then she remembers the locket and takes the peyote out. It tastes awful, and she spits it into the sand before picking it back up and forcing it down her throat. As the effects begin to stir, she grabs the rifle and cycles the weapon. Soon, dramatic music rises. Maybe in her head, maybe not, and it leaves her on edge, hands clamped over her ears. A loud voice calls out for murder, sending a surge of energy through her. She cuts open the can with the blade, laying it flat like a map, then sterilizes the blade and nicks the squishy suit so the stick has more room to be pulled out. Once she pulls it out, blood gushes, but that's what the cut can is for. Sizzling with heat from the flames, she cauterizes the gaping hole, all without feeling a single twinge of pain, though she still collapses. Stan sleeps in his car until daybreak, woken by Richard slapping a bloody catch onto the windshield. Rick thinks to reach out to Dimitri, assuming he's also gone hunting. Stan steps out and stretches, then heads to the lake to take a piss, unnecessarily drowning a harmless spider in yellow juice. He's washing his face and stink pocket when his pal's body surfaces. Next thing he knows, he's in the water, screaming in shock before swimming away from the corpse. He vomits by the car while Rick watches, expressionless. Inside the car, he's yelling and punching the air in frustration, the blood from the game coating half of the visor. He finally decides to drag the corpse out after staring long enough, while the other guy talks to himself, trying to figure out how it all went wrong. With each ragged breath, the wiper smears the blood across the visor, the aircon fogging it just enough to melt away and clear it. Pokerface drags the corpse to shore and comes knocking on the window. When Stan rolls it down, he's told to put up the aircon, too unenvironmental for Rick's taste. Plus, his help is needed with the body. He storms out to play the blame game, but Jen's ex isn't having it. Together, they swing Dimitri's body back into the water. The story will be that the dead guy got careless while hunting despite warnings from his friends. Just when it seems everything's done and dusted, Richard swings at Stan and the guy collapses, wincing from a broken and bloody noise. The attacker then gets on his bike and starts to drive off while Stan is left whining and with the car. Both vehicles storm through the desert with purpose while Jen is still in the cave. She jolts out of sleep and finds the design from the can has branded her. Now's got a makeshift tattoo of an eagle with the word beer scribbled on top. She gathers her ammo and heads for the opening when that psycho blocks her view with a rifle of his own and blows off her noggin. In a second dream, it's nighttime when she jolts awake, sees the branding, and grabs the ammo. Richard still appears, firing. Then another dream unfolds, this time Dimitri's corpse, followed by a distorted Stan questioning her. Hallucinations flood her, memories mingling with horror. She bolts from the cave and just keeps running. An actual eagle appears, total madness, until she jolts awake again for what seems to be the last time. She straps on the belt to hold the blade and extra gear before moving out of the cave. From pageant beauty to warrior princess, her body is streaked with dried blood and dirt alike. Her hair has gone from golden blonde to ashy from the grime, and she's stripped down to just her underwear. She pulls out binoculars and scans her environment, but nothing for miles. Stan is also scanning through and finds nothing. They found the abandoned bike and know she's on foot. A livid Richard wants a map, quick. Stan gets what he wants, and they start to strategize. One person will head east, while the other goes west. The idea being to check every nook and cranny until they find her. But the one with the broken nose isn't sure, insisting they should stick together like they would in a forest, citing strength in a pair. As far as Pokerface is concerned, this isn't a forest, so they better get going. He jumps on his bike, leaving the brute with the car. On the other hand, Jen spots a glim of light and stays locked. It's Stan using a mirror and in the process reflecting light. She watches him get in the car and drives off, expression unreadable. She starts to close in with a rifle while he cruises along the desert hills. The car beeps for fuel and parks. He steps out to access the trunk. Inside is a jerry can, which he takes to the gas tank to fill. Jen hides behind a rock and readies the rifle. She has several clear shots and time on her hands while he fills the tank, but she hesitates, shifting between angles. The more she looks at him, the more he reminds her of a lizard from one of her hallucinations. Finally, she shoots, only hitting his shoulder blade. The recoil sends her to the ground, ears ringing. By the time she regains her footing, he's nowhere in sight, and she's left frantically scanning for him, her grip far from steady. She draws closer still, but there's still no sight of him. Just the abandoned car and splatter of blood from where she shot him. The front hood has a handprint, and onward is a trail of life juice. Stan is limping ahead, clothes soaked and eyes wide. He throws several glances back, as if expecting her to pop out of nowhere, and maybe she will, because she's yet to derail from his tail. At some point, he takes off a shoe and uses the sock to gauge the bleeding in his shoulder. She finds the discarded shoe and keeps moving. She has no idea that Stan has the upper hand, perched like an eagle on a hill while she wanders below. He readies the gun, but his shoulder proves a hindrance, making him grunt. With shaky hands, he fires and the bullet slices off a chunk of her ear. Crying, ears ringing from what's left, she scrambles to her feet and retrieves her stick boom, hurrying along. The shots that follow are muffled, but none hit her, even as he trails behind. To slow him down, she smashes the flashlight against a rock, leaving shards of glass. He falls into the trap, one shard carving a canyon-sized gash in the sole of his foot. He tries to remove the fragment, but it's deeply embedded. Every move causes him to lose more Ruby River and sends waves of pain through him. At one point, he wipes his face in frustration, smearing it with blood. Panting and cradling his foot, he tries again with sheer determination. Holding back, screams. When he finally pulls out the teeny-weeny piece, victory has him laughing before he throws it on the floor like it's touchdown. The leg's practically useless, but he still makes it to the car and tosses the firearm into a corner. The car needs a pedal start, as just the key won't suffice. He forces himself to push the accelerator, though that's the bad foot, and it stings like crazy. The engine roars, and now both him and the vehicle are fueled by adrenaline as he speeds off, hooting. Jen is in his path, exhausted from all the running. She takes a stance and times him. As he turbo trots like a menace, she shoots. Once, twice, and misses. Looks like she's about to get smitten when the next round is a bullseye, and she ducks just as the Rover skids past before coming to a stop. When she opens the door, the corpse falls out. Richard is on the walkie-talkie trying to reach out to Stan. She zooms off while the last man standing is back at base. All alone, he sits by his bike and waits, still calling out to his friend. At some point, he must have realized he's cooked and starts screaming in frustration, kicking at the sand. He then decides to put his helmet on and get back on his bike. The sun's down, but he's still moving in circles. Then morning comes, and he's back at his crib, dives headfirst into the pool before collapsing on the floor, coughing. Indoors, he takes a breather on the couch. Ever calculative, he calls Roberto and lies that the others had urgent matters, so he dropped them at the airport, cutting their hunting fun short. Now, he needs the aviator and that chopper to come pick him up, and Roberto says he'll be there in half an hour. He's a mess of dirt and thoughts, starting to pull off his gear but keeping the peace by his side. Like a zombie, he shuffles to the bathroom and lets the water run. A sudden sound interrupts shower time, but the peace is with him, so he aims at the door, waiting steadily for the intruder. When no one barges in, he goes looking, high, on alert, not caring that he's in his birthday suit. After checking the entire house, he steps out onto the patio and finally lets his guard down. There's a toy car in the pool, which he pulls out before walking the rim of the pool, still quite vigilant. Finding nothing, he returns to his crib and settles onto the couch, but only for a second, because the TV suddenly turns on with an advert. Jen shows up the same way Stan once did, behind the colorful pane, silent, but she's armed, blood boiling, while Richard just stares as if wondering whether she's actually going to do it. He starts to talk, but she responds with a shot that sends him flying, guts spilling from his side. She fires more rounds, though it's unclear if they hit. There's no room on her side, so she pops out each time he peeks from behind the couch, forcing him to take cover and rack. One zap from her end nicks his already gaping wound, and he grunts in pain. Her eyes watch from behind a deck chair. The TV blares on as he drags himself across his once plush rug. He crawls toward the inner hallway, and she steps out from her cover to follow the track and finish him. Somehow, he manages a 360, the trail leading back to the deck. She has no idea that he's at the corner of the wall, intently waiting for movement from the deck, while he's completely soaked but standing and aiming. If she inches any further, he'll have the nuzzle at her head for a quickie. It's a waiting game, and she almost loses, about to take a step forward, when a fresh stream flows from the corner. He's standing. Now she knows she silently steps back, hurrying to the opposite side of the corner, so she'll be at his back and have the first and last shot. When he doesn't show up, he starts rounding the corner, maneuvering through the slippery pool, just at the moment she should have been at his back, only to find the spot empty. She has the upper hand, though, as he's weak and aching, bracing himself against the wall to keep moving. Noise distracts her, and she's unsure which direction to go. On the other side, he scavenges through lurching utensils until he finds a wrapper to keep his injury at bay. Back to the waiting game, until she bravely runs up the fuse, forcing him to duck and retreat. He zaps bullets of his own, but soon he's empty. It's like cat and mouse in a maze until Jen slips and falls, losing grip of her gun. She can't recover in time, and he finds her, knocking her unconscious. She regains consciousness quickly and resumes scrambling for her gun, but he grabs her by the leg and soon has her in a chokehold, growling as he delivers one of those long-winded speeches that gives an opponent time to think ahead and make the better move. In this case, she jabs at his wound, causing him to lose his grip, allowing her to retrieve her piece. He charges just in time for her to rack, and the second she releases, it's game over. Finally, she picks herself up and moves past his corpse. Out on the deck, she can hear the chopper approaching. Such a tough movie today. Share your opinion in the comments. Can a girl's promiscuous look and behavior be considered a justification for what happened? Or are only the men to blame? I'm reading everything and really looking forward to your thoughts.